Hi and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I'll be crafting with the Cottage Cuts cake shop. Now if you're not familiar with Cottage Cuts, generally their dies come on one single die plate, but that single die plate will cut out multiple elements, and as you can see here with this one, there are a lot of elements that you're getting to use and paper piece or paper doll to create your cake shop. And with dies like these, my favorite way of using them is to pull out all of my little itty bitty scraps, which I do tend to keep, and I just trim those down to size and lay them on top of the die plate. Now, the die plate is the cutting edge face up. And I just place a little bit of cardstock. You can see some of these elements are so small. So you don't need huge pieces of paper or cardstock, and you don't have to always die cut the entire die plate. You can just selectively cut the elements that you need. Now normally I would leave this entire bottom plate and die on my magnetic base. That way everything stays still. I wouldn't normally kind of bring it over to my work area as you're seeing here, but I'm only doing this for video purposes so that you can actually see my process for how I do this partial die cutting to get all of my little elements. And I highly recommend leaving this on your base plate because moving it around as I was on camera can shift those little pieces of cardstock around. And so I found that I get better results by just leaving it, especially since I do have a magnetic base plate. And so now I'll start to kind of assemble the cake shop. And I always like to die cut a lot of elements so that I have a lot of different options. I die cut in multiple colors just because sometimes I can't really decide, how I want things to look until I see the different options as they're meant to be. And so that's why you'll probably see off to the side a lot of repeated elements, just so that when I get to this point, I can just play, swap things in and out and see what I like better. And, I don't have to make that decision while I'm doing the die cutting. And so that's part of the fun of this process for me is you get to kind of be your own decorator and your own architect to some degree. Now, how I like to assemble these, because some of the pieces are so small, for the larger pieces, it might be faster to maybe put some double-sided adhesive tape behind your cardstock before you die cut it. That way you essentially have a sticker. But a lot of these pieces are really teeny tiny, so what I prefer to do is I like to use my quickie glue pen. I use my pokey tool to kind of hold it down. I use my quickie glue pen to trace or draw a line of glue around those delicate edges. And here I'll close up, zoom in a little bit so that you can see me assemble these cakes, because they probably have the smallest pieces in this particular die set. But it's not too terribly difficult if you have something. Basically, the three things that I found particularly useful are my pokey tool to hold it down, maybe do some shifting around of the pieces. My quickie glue pen, as I mentioned, because you can really just draw a very precise line of glue where you need it, and it doesn't ooze out a lot like a PVA glue would. And then I use my wax ended pickup tool to pick up those small little decorative sort of icing pieces on the cakes and place them exactly where I need them. Now I'm keeping the packaging right next to me as I assemble, because one of the things I really appreciate that Cottage Cuts does is that on their packaging, they use all of the elements that come on that die plate. So if you're ever wondering, especially if you've done the die cutting the way I have and everything's just kind of a jumbled mess on your table. And if you're ever wondering, well, where does this piece go? How do I use this? Just examine, your packaging, and you'll find it on there somewhere. Of course, as I assembled a couple of these and I started to get to the end, I just started to go freeform and decorate those cakes however I wanted with the pieces that I had left. So use the packaging as a guide, but definitely, these are just shapes at the end of the day. So you can use them however you like and come up with different cake designs. And also feel free to kind of snip into those cakes and any elements really to create new and different shapes. The other thing that I want to note with the packaging that I really appreciate is that what you see is everything that's on the die plate and nothing else. So you don't have to wonder if you're looking at the packaging and you don't have to think to yourself, well, where is that from? Is that from a different die set, or is that from this die set? It's all going to come from the die set that you have included there. So this die set I'm using is the Spooky Camper, and everything is available at the scrappingcottage.com. That's the Cottage Cuts essentially online website. So I'll leave a link to everything that I use in the description box below if you're curious to check any of these out. But I think you can pick up, especially on this close-up zoomed in angle, you can see all of the detail that actually gets debossed into or embossed into these die cut elements. So you can see the sort of that tiling on the roof. You can see the stonework around these window frames. And here I'm actually assembling a haunted house of sorts. These little rectangular pieces are from the cake shop. They were the smaller ones were the small windows, and the wider rectangle was actually the front step to the door. And I'm just using them as bricks. So just again, another way of sort of using or repurposing some of these shapes into other things. And with the haunted house, I'm actually using more elements from the Spooky Camper, and which also includes these pumpkins or jack-o'-lanterns. There's even a die that will cut out that sort of backing to the jack-o'-lantern face. So you can die cut that out of black like I've done here, but if you want to make it seem like there's a candle inside your jack-o'-lantern, you can always die cut that out of yellow to sort of suggest a little bit of a glow. And lots and lots of fun little elements. So here's where I'll start to actually assemble the 2 cards that I'll be making. If you came here from the Cottage Cuts channel, everything from here to the end of this video you will have already seen. For the purposes of keeping the video on the Cottage Cuts channel nice and short, I've actually left out a lot of the assembly. So if you have come from the Cottage Cuts channel, then you can feel free to not watch the rest of this video because you will have already seen it. If you're not familiar with the Cottage Cuts channel, I definitely recommend popping on over there because lots of inspiration for not just this release, but all of the Cottage Cuts releases, and as well, lots of giveaway opportunities too. So if you want a chance to actually win the cake shop die that I'm using here, then pop on over to the Cottage Cuts YouTube channel. I'll leave a link to it in the upper right hand corner, and you can just watch my video and to see what you need to do to be in for a chance to win the cake shop die. I really love this cake shop die because it's really versatile. As you can see, you can really theme it for any occasion, for any time of year, for any holiday, and it's perfect to mix and match with your older sets because especially if you look at the name of the product or the description of the product, you'll see the sizing for the main elements, and so that'll give you a really good hint if things are going to work together scale wise. And as you can see here, these are both 4x6 die sets, and so all of the elements work fantastically together, and scale wise they all fit beautifully. So I love that, you know, Cottage Cuts does this, because with every new release it has the potential to bring new life to a previous release. And I think that's fantastic because, you know, when we're making decisions to purchase things, or at least when I like to try to get the most out of what I buy. And so when companies have new releases that allow you to sort of reimagine some of your older releases, I think that just helps to really add more value to both of what you're purchasing, both the older thing that you may have already purchased and has been sitting in your stash, but as well, it adds value to the new releases too, because you know that it's going to extend the life of perhaps some of your older releases. Now, on this haunted house, I had a lot of fun with this one because I had so many leftover Halloween elements from my first card that I really just went to town on hiding all of these little Halloween elements wherever I could. And I love the little ghost that comes with the two arms to make it appear as if it's sort of peeking up over something. There's so many different ways that you can use that, and it just has this nice fun quirky little element. And I definitely love that so many of these elements play nicely together. So for example, the little bushes at the lining the front of my house, those were actually the potted plants from the cake shop that I decided to just use as a nice sort of row of hedges in front of my house. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to kind of snip into your cuts. So for example, I just snipped off the legs of my cat just so that I can tuck it in behind that pumpkin and make it seem like it's hiding behind the pumpkin. And with the spider, I did something similar where I snipped off the little spider web on one of them so that it doesn't look like it's hanging down, but rather it just looks like it's hiding or crawling on top of the pumpkin. So here's my first card, a Halloween themed cake shop. So still a cake shop, just Halloween themed. And this card is using the cake shop, but turning it into something totally different, turning it into a haunted house. So tons of little elements. I love that you can just look at this all day long and find all of those little Halloween elements. I hope that you enjoyed these two cards, and if you did, please consider liking, commenting, and sharing. And if you want to catch new videos as I publish them, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing the notification bell. Thanks so much. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.